Do you remember Saturday mornings when your grandmother stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while sunlight warmed the kitchen tiles? Her old Betty Crocker cookbook lay open beside her, its pages soft, stained, and trusted.
Do you remember the way kitchens sounded a century ago? When mornings began with the soft scrape of cast iron on a coal stove?
Between 1950 and 1959, 30 pancake recipes filled American kitchens. By 1965, 15 remained. Today, most families make one. Number 21, born from mashed potatoes and bacon grease, shows how nothing was wasted. Tonight, we preserve all 30 before the last grandmothers who cooked this way are gone. Walk into any 1950s kitchen on Saturday morning, and you'd find grandmothers mixing cornmeal into their pancake batter, creating golden cakes with slightly gritty texture that tasted like cornbread transformed into breakfast. This Southern-influenced recipe cost about 15 cents and fed a family of 6 with pancakes that were heartier and more filling than regular flour pancakes. Grandmothers made cornmeal pancakes by mixing cornmeal with flour, eggs, milk, and a little sugar, creating batter that was thicker than regular pancake batter. The cornmeal needed to sit in the liquid for 10 minutes before cooking so it could soften and absorb moisture, teaching patience that separated good pancakes from grainy ones. The pancakes were served with butter and molasses or honey instead of maple syrup, creating a flavor combination that tasted more like dinner bread than breakfast sweet. Children who grew up eating cornmeal pancakes remembered them as the pancakes that filled you up until lunch. Apple pancakes brought fruit into breakfast through grated apple mixed directly into the batter, creating pancakes studded with sweet apple pieces that caramelized slightly when they hit the hot griddle. This fall favorite cost about 20 cents and used apples that were getting soft, teaching grandmother's philosophy about wasting nothing. Grandmothers grated apples on box graters, leaving the peel on for color and nutrition, then stirred the grated apple into regular pancake batter with extra cinnamon. The apple released moisture as it cooked, creating pancakes that were tender inside with crispy edges where the apple pieces touched the griddle. The pancakes were served warm with butter that melted into the apple pieces, creating pockets of sweet, buttery fruit throughout each bite. Rice pancakes solved the problem of leftover rice from dinner, transforming cold, sticky rice into breakfast that used every bit of food and taught children that leftovers weren't garbage, but ingredients waiting to become something new. This thrifty creation cost almost nothing because it used rice that would otherwise be thrown away. Grandmothers stirred cold-cooked rice into pancake batter, creating pancakes with interesting texture, smooth batter surrounding little pockets of soft rice grains. The rice made the pancakes more filling and gave them a slightly chewy quality that was different from regular pancakes. The pancakes worked best with white rice, though some grandmothers used brown rice if that's what they had left over. The rice didn't change the flavor much, but it changed the texture enough that children could tell these weren't regular pancakes, making breakfast feel special even when it was made from leftovers. Buckwheat cakes brought dark, earthy flavor to breakfast tables through flour made from buckwheat groats instead of wheat. This traditional recipe cost about 25 cents and created pancakes that tasted nutty and rich, appealing to adults more than children who often found the strong flavor too different from what they expected. Grandmothers made buckwheat cakes using buckwheat flour mixed with regular flour, because pure buckwheat made pancakes too heavy and too strongly flavored. The buckwheat flour created darker batter that cooked into grayish-brown pancakes instead of golden ones, looking different enough that children sometimes refused to try them. The cakes were traditionally served with butter and maple syrup, though some grandmothers served them with sausage gravy, treating them more like biscuits than pancakes. Blueberry pancakes brought summer fruit into breakfast through fresh or frozen berries, folded gently into batter just before cooking. This classic recipe cost about 30 cents when berries were in season and created pancakes that burst with warm, sweet juice when you bit into them. Grandmothers added blueberries to the batter after pouring it onto the griddle rather than mixing them in beforehand, creating even distribution without crushing the berries. The berries on the bottom of each pancake caramelized slightly against the hot griddle, creating sweet spots that tasted almost like candy. The pancakes were served immediately because they didn't hold well. The berry juice made them soggy if they sat too long. Children loved blueberry pancakes because finding each berry felt like discovering treasure, and the purple juice that ran out when you cut them made them seem magical and special. You've just seen 5 pancakes your grandmother made every week. Cornmeal mixing with flour. Apples grated fresh each morning, yesterday's rice becoming today's breakfast, buckwheat's dark, earthy taste. Blueberries bursting warm and sweet, each one taught something: patience, thrift, tradition, or simple summer joy. 25 more pancakes wait ahead. Whole wheat pancakes brought nutrition to breakfast through flour that still contained the wheat's bran and germ, creating heavier, denser pancakes that grandmothers insisted were better for you, even when children complained they weren't as light and fluffy as white flour pancakes. Grandmothers made whole wheat pancakes by replacing half or all of the white flour with whole wheat flour, creating batter that was thicker and darker than regular pancake batter. The whole wheat flour absorbed more liquid, so grandmothers often had to add extra milk to get the batter to the right consistency for pouring. The pancakes cooked more slowly than white flour pancakes because the bran in whole wheat flour interfered with gluten development, creating pancakes that were denser and more filling. One whole wheat pancake filled you up as much as 2 regular pancakes, making them economical even though whole wheat flour cost more than white flour. The flavor was nuttier and more complex than white flour pancakes, with a slight bitterness from the bran that some people loved and others tolerated because grandmothers insisted whole wheat was healthier. Buttermilk pancakes became the standard against which all other pancakes were measured, creating the light, tangy cakes that most people think of when they hear the word pancake. This basic recipe cost about 20 cents and produced the fluffiest pancakes because buttermilk's acidity reacted with baking soda to create extra rise. Grandmothers made buttermilk pancakes by mixing buttermilk with flour, eggs, baking soda, and a little sugar, creating batter that bubbled and foamed as the buttermilk reacted with the baking soda. This reaction had to happen right before cooking. If the batter sat too long, the bubbles deflated and the pancakes came out flat instead of fluffy. The buttermilk's tang balanced the sweetness of syrup perfectly, creating flavor combination that tasted more interesting than plain milk pancakes. The acidity also created tender texture by preventing too much gluten from developing, making buttermilk pancakes softer than pancakes made with regular milk. Chocolate pancakes brought dessert to breakfast through cocoa powder stirred into batter, creating dark brown pancakes that tasted like cake and made children excited to get out of bed on Saturday mornings. This treat cost about 35 cents and turned breakfast into celebration. Grandmothers made chocolate pancakes by adding cocoa powder and extra sugar to regular pancake batter, creating batter that was darker and sweeter than regular pancakes. The cocoa powder had to be mixed with the dry ingredients first before adding liquid, or it would form lumps that wouldn't dissolve no matter how much you stirred. The pancakes were served with butter and powdered sugar instead of syrup, or sometimes with whipped cream, treating them more like dessert than breakfast. Some grandmothers added chocolate chips to the batter, creating pancakes that were so rich and sweet they were more like brownies than traditional breakfast food. Oatmeal pancakes used rolled oats soaked in buttermilk overnight, creating pancakes with hearty texture and nutty flavor that stuck to your ribs and kept you full until dinner. This filling recipe cost about 20 cents and appealed to grandmothers who believed breakfast should sustain hard-working families through morning labor. Grandmothers made oatmeal pancakes by soaking rolled oats in buttermilk the night before, allowing the oats to soften and absorb liquid. In the morning, they stirred in eggs, flour, and baking soda, creating thick batter studded with soft oat pieces that created interesting texture in every bite. The overnight soaking was essential. Unsoaked oats stayed too hard and made the pancakes tough and chewy instead of tender. The soaking also allowed the oats to release their starch, which helped bind the pancakes together and created better texture than just mixing raw oats into batter. Gingerbread pancakes brought Christmas spices to breakfast through molasses, ginger, cinnamon, and cloves mixed into batter that cooked into dark, fragrant cakes, tasting like gingerbread cookies in pancake form. This holiday-inspired recipe cost about 30 cents and made winter mornings feel festive and special. Grandmothers made gingerbread pancakes by adding molasses to pancake batter, along with ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and sometimes a little black pepper for extra warmth. The molasses made the batter darker and thicker, requiring extra milk to thin it to proper pouring consistency. The pancakes cooked more slowly than regular pancakes because molasses contained more sugar, which meant they browned faster and could burn if the griddle was too hot. Grandmothers learned to cook gingerbread pancakes at lower temperature than other pancakes, waiting patiently for them to cook through without burning the outside. 10 pancakes down, and patterns emerge: whole wheat for health, buttermilk for fluffiness, chocolate for celebration, oatmeal soaked overnight for substance, gingerbread bringing Christmas to breakfast. Your grandmother wasn't just cooking, she was teaching that different mornings deserved different pancakes, that breakfast could be creative, that food carried meaning. 20 more recipes complete the tradition. Banana pancakes rescued overripe bananas from the trash, transforming brown-spotted fruit into sweet, tender pancakes that tasted like banana bread in breakfast form. This thrifty recipe cost almost nothing because it used bananas that were too soft to eat plain, but perfect for mashing into batter. Grandmothers made banana pancakes by mashing very ripe bananas. The browner and spottier, the better, then stirring the mashed banana into regular pancake batter. The banana made the batter thicker and sweeter, requiring less sugar than regular pancakes. The banana also made the pancakes more tender because the fruit's natural pectin created softer texture. The pancakes browned quickly because of the banana's natural sugars, so grandmothers had to watch them carefully and cook them at slightly lower temperature than regular pancakes. The banana pieces created dark spots on the pancakes where they caramelized against the hot griddle, making the pancakes look spotty but taste sweet and rich. Potato pancakes brought Jewish tradition to American breakfast tables through grated raw potato mixed with egg and onion, fried until crispy and golden. This savory recipe cost about 25 cents and created pancakes that were more like hash browns than sweet breakfast cakes, served with sour cream or applesauce instead of syrup. Grandmothers made potato pancakes by grating raw potatoes on box graters, squeezing out the excess liquid that would otherwise make the pancakes soggy, then mixing the grated potato with grated onion, egg, flour, and salt. The mixture was fried in hot oil until crispy on both sides, creating pancakes that were crunchy outside and tender inside. The squeezing step was essential. If you didn't remove enough liquid, the pancakes fell apart in the pan and never got crispy. Pumpkin pancakes brought fall flavors to breakfast through canned pumpkin puree mixed into batter with warming spices, creating orange-colored pancakes that tasted like pumpkin pie transformed into morning food. This seasonal recipe cost about 30 cents and appeared primarily in autumn when pumpkin everything felt appropriate. Grandmothers made pumpkin pancakes by stirring canned pumpkin into regular pancake batter, along with cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and cloves, the same spices used in pumpkin pie. The pumpkin made the batter thicker and denser, requiring extra milk to thin it to proper consistency. The pumpkin also made the pancakes more tender and moist, creating texture that was almost cake-like. Pumpkin pancakes taught that canned vegetables could be used in unexpected ways, that pumpkin wasn't just for pie, and that seasonal eating meant matching your food to the weather and time of year. These lessons connected cooking to natural rhythms and seasons rather than treating all foods as available all the time. Cheese pancakes brought savory richness to breakfast through cottage cheese or cream cheese mixed into batter, creating tender, protein-rich pancakes that were more filling than regular pancakes and appealed to people who didn't have sweet tooth for syrupy breakfast. This European-influenced recipe cost about 40 cents and created pancakes that were almost like crepes, thin, tender, and delicate. Grandmothers made cheese pancakes by mixing cottage cheese or softened cream cheese into pancake batter, creating mixture that was lumpy from the cheese curds but that cooked into surprisingly smooth, tender pancakes. The cheese added protein and fat that made the pancakes more substantial and satisfying, keeping you full longer than regular pancakes. The batter had to be thinner than regular pancake batter because the cheese added thickness and density. Grandmothers learned to add extra milk until the batter poured easily and spread thin on the griddle, creating pancakes that were more like thin crepes than thick, fluffy American pancakes. These pancakes were served with sour cream and jam, or with butter and a sprinkle of cinnamon sugar, or sometimes with fresh fruit. The serving options showed how versatile they were. They could be sweet or savory depending on what you put on them. Cheese pancakes appeared in households where grandmothers had Eastern European heritage, Polish, Russian, Jewish families who brought blintzes and other cheese-filled traditions to America and adapted them to American pancake format. The recipe represented cultural adaptation, taking old country food and making it fit into American breakfast customs. Sour cream pancakes created the most tender, rich pancakes through sour cream's fat and acidity working together to make pancakes that were soft as cake and slightly tangy in a way that balanced syrup's sweetness perfectly. This luxurious recipe cost about 50 cents and created pancakes that tasted expensive and special, even though they used simple ingredients. Grandmothers made sour cream pancakes by replacing some or all of the milk in regular pancake batter with sour cream, creating thicker, richer batter that cooked into pancakes with velvety texture. The sour cream's acidity reacted with baking soda, just like buttermilk did, creating extra rise and fluffy texture, while the fat created richness that made each bite feel indulgent. The batter was thicker than regular pancake batter because sour cream was thicker than milk, so grandmothers often had to thin it slightly with regular milk to get it to pour and spread properly on the griddle. The thickness meant the pancakes cooked more slowly and needed lower heat to cook through without burning the outside. These pancakes were special occasion breakfast, Sunday mornings, holidays, birthdays, because sour cream was more expensive than regular milk, and because the richness meant you couldn't eat as many. 2 sour cream pancakes filled you up as much as 4 regular pancakes, making them satisfying despite smaller portions. Sour cream pancakes taught that fat wasn't something to fear or avoid, but rather an ingredient that created flavor and texture. That richness made food satisfying in ways that low-fat versions couldn't match, and that sometimes spending more on better ingredients created results that were worth the extra cost. 15 pancakes, and you're seeing grandmother wisdom: bananas rescued from the trash, potatoes grated and squeezed, pumpkin bringing autumn indoors, cheese making breakfast more filling, sour cream creating luxury from simple ingredients. She understood that pancakes were problem-solving, that breakfast was creativity, that morning meals deserved thought and care. 15 more pancakes ahead. Pecan pancakes brought Southern tradition and nutty richness to breakfast through chopped pecans folded into batter or sprinkled on top while pancakes cooked, creating crunchy bits throughout each bite. This special occasion recipe cost about 60 cents when pecans were in season and created pancakes that felt fancy enough for company. Grandmothers made pecan pancakes by toasting chopped pecans in a dry skillet until fragrant, then stirring them into regular pancake batter or sprinkling them onto pancakes immediately after pouring batter onto the griddle. The toasting step was essential. Raw pecans tasted flat and bland, but toasted pecans had deep, rich flavor that made the pancakes taste special. The pecans on the bottom of each pancake, the ones touching the hot griddle, caramelized slightly, creating extra crunchy, sweet-tasting nuts that were different from the softer nuts mixed into the batter. This textural variety made each bite interesting, with some bites crunchy and others softer. These pancakes were served with butter and maple syrup, though some grandmothers made pecan syrup by simmering chopped pecans in maple syrup, creating topping that doubled down on pecan flavor. The combination of sweet syrup and rich nuts created flavor profile that tasted like pecan pie for breakfast. Pecan pancakes appeared most often in southern states where pecan trees grew wild and families gathered pecans in fall, creating free ingredient that turned ordinary pancakes into something special. The regional availability meant pecan pancakes were common in some areas and unknown in others, creating regional breakfast traditions that marked where you grew up. Orange pancakes brought citrus brightness to breakfast through orange juice and orange zest mixed into batter, creating pancakes that tasted sunny and fresh, different from the heavy, sweet pancakes that dominated most breakfast tables. This refreshing recipe cost about 35 cents and created pancakes that woke you up with their bright flavor. Grandmothers made orange pancakes by replacing the milk in regular pancake batter with fresh orange juice and adding grated orange zest for extra orange flavor. The orange juice's acidity reacted with baking soda, just like buttermilk, creating fluffy, tender pancakes with subtle citrus taste that wasn't overwhelming but was definitely present. The zest was essential. Without it, the pancakes just tasted vaguely citrusy, but with zest, they had bright, true orange flavor that made them distinctive. Grandmothers grated orange peel on fine graters, being careful to get only the colored part and not the bitter white pith underneath. These pancakes were served with butter and a dusting of powdered sugar instead of syrup, or sometimes with orange marmalade, creating all-orange breakfast that felt coordinated and intentional. The brightness made them popular in summer when heavy, syrupy pancakes felt too rich for hot mornings. Orange pancakes taught that citrus could be breakfast flavor, not just juice to drink alongside breakfast, and that bright, fresh flavors had place at morning meals just like sweet, rich ones did. Bacon pancakes combined sweet and savory through crispy bacon pieces mixed into batter or pressed into pancakes while they cooked, creating breakfast that was complete in itself. No need for bacon on the side when it was baked right into your pancakes. This efficient recipe cost about 50 cents and appealed to people who liked their breakfast foods touching on the plate anyway. Grandmothers made bacon pancakes by cooking bacon until crispy, crumbling it into small pieces, then stirring the bacon pieces into regular pancake batter. Some grandmothers used the bacon grease instead of butter or oil to grease the griddle, creating extra bacon flavor and using every bit of the bacon without waste. The bacon pieces created salty, savory pockets throughout the sweet pancake, creating flavor combination that some people loved and others found confusing. Was this breakfast or dessert? The sweet-salty combination was ahead of its time, predating the salted caramel and bacon-on-everything trends by decades. These pancakes were served with butter and maple syrup, just like regular pancakes, though the bacon meant you didn't need to cook separate meat, saving time and dishes on busy mornings. The efficiency appealed to grandmothers feeding large families who wanted complete breakfast without making multiple dishes. Bacon pancakes taught that breakfast foods didn't have to be separate, that sweet and savory could coexist in single dish, and that convenience didn't always mean processed food. Sometimes it just meant smart combination of ingredients. Graham cracker pancakes used crushed graham crackers instead of some of the flour, creating pancakes with subtle honey-cinnamon flavor and slightly crunchy texture from the cracker crumbs. This creative recipe cost about 30 cents and used up graham crackers that had gotten stale, teaching the same waste-nothing philosophy that characterized all of grandmother's cooking. Grandmothers made graham cracker pancakes by crushing graham crackers into fine crumbs, either by putting them in a bag and rolling with a rolling pin, or by grinding them in a hand-cranked food grinder, then using the crumbs to replace half the flour in regular pancake batter. The graham cracker crumbs added subtle sweetness and honey flavor that meant the pancakes needed less added sugar. The texture was different from regular pancakes, slightly grainy from the cracker crumbs, but in a pleasant way that added interest to each bite. The crumbs also made the pancakes more tender because graham crackers contained less gluten than flour, creating softer texture that some people preferred. These pancakes were served with butter and honey instead of maple syrup, creating all-honey flavor profile that tasted cohesive and intentional. Some grandmothers added cinnamon to the batter, enhancing the graham cracker's natural cinnamon flavor and creating pancakes that tasted like cinnamon toast. Sourdough pancakes brought pioneer tradition to 1950s breakfast tables through sourdough starter, a living culture of wild yeast and bacteria that grandmothers maintained like pets, feeding it regularly and using it to leaven bread and pancakes. This old-fashioned recipe cost almost nothing beyond the original starter and created pancakes with complex, tangy flavor that you couldn't get from baking powder. Grandmothers made sourdough pancakes by mixing sourdough starter with flour, milk, and eggs the night before, letting the mixture sit overnight to ferment and develop flavor. In the morning, they added baking soda, which reacted with the sourdough's acidity to create rise and fluffy texture. The overnight fermentation created complex flavor, tangy, slightly sour, with depth that regular pancakes lacked. The starter required maintenance. It had to be fed regularly with flour and water, or it would die. Grandmothers who kept sourdough starter treated it with care, knowing that the starter connected them to previous generations who'd maintained the same living culture, sometimes for decades. Some starters were passed down through families, creating living heirlooms that connected present cooking to past traditions. 20 pancakes down, 2/3 through. Pecans toasted for richness, orange bringing sunshine to breakfast, bacon mixing sweet and salt, graham crackers rescued from staleness, sourdough starter maintained like family heirloom. Your grandmother was a scientist, an artist, a historian, all before most people woke up. 10 more pancakes complete the collection. This is the pancake the hook promised would show you what grandmothers knew about using everything, transforming yesterday's mashed potatoes into today's breakfast through technique that turned leftovers into something completely different and delicious. Mashed potato pancakes solved the problem of leftover mashed potatoes that sat in the refrigerator getting cold and unappetizing. Instead of throwing them away or forcing everyone to eat reheated potatoes that never tasted as good as fresh ones, grandmothers stirred the cold mashed potatoes into pancake batter, creating pancakes that were fluffy, tender, and filling in ways that regular pancakes couldn't match. Grandmothers made mashed potato pancakes by mixing cold mashed potatoes with eggs, flour, milk, and baking powder, creating batter that was thicker and lumpier than regular pancake batter, but that cooked into surprisingly light pancakes. The potatoes added moisture and starch that made the pancakes tender, while the potato chunks created interesting texture throughout each bite. The bacon grease mentioned in the hook came into play here. Grandmothers often fried these pancakes in bacon grease saved from breakfast earlier in the week, creating savory flavor that complemented the potatoes and made the pancakes taste more like hash browns than sweet breakfast cakes. This savory direction meant mashed potato pancakes were often served with eggs and more bacon rather than with syrup, creating complete breakfast that used leftovers as the star rather than the afterthought. The technique required understanding how mashed potatoes behaved in batter. If the potatoes were too wet or had too much butter mixed in, they made the batter too loose, and the pancakes wouldn't hold together. If the potatoes were too dry or had gotten stiff in the refrigerator, they created lumps that wouldn't mix smoothly into the batter. Grandmothers learned to adjust the flour and milk amounts based on how wet or dry the leftover potatoes were, demonstrating the kind of intuitive cooking knowledge that came from experience rather than written recipes. Some grandmothers added chopped onion or chives to mashed potato pancakes, enhancing the savory direction and creating pancakes that tasted like potato cakes or latkes rather than breakfast pancakes. Others added cheese, cheddar or Parmesan, creating rich, savory pancakes that were substantial enough to be the entire meal rather than just one component of breakfast. Sweet potato pancakes brought Southern tradition and natural sweetness to breakfast through mashed sweet potatoes mixed into batter, creating orange-colored pancakes that tasted like sweet potato casserole transformed into morning food. These pancakes cost about 35 cents when sweet potatoes were in season and created breakfast that felt special and festive, appropriate for holiday mornings when regular pancakes seemed too ordinary. The natural sweetness of sweet potatoes meant these pancakes needed less added sugar than regular pancakes, and the orange color made them look distinctive and appealing on the plate. Grandmothers made sweet potato pancakes by baking or boiling sweet potatoes until soft, mashing them smooth, then stirring the mashed sweet potato into regular pancake batter along with warm spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and sometimes a pinch of ginger. The sweet potato made the batter thicker and denser, requiring extra milk to thin it to proper pouring consistency. The sweet potato added moisture that made the pancakes incredibly tender, almost cake-like in texture, and the natural sugars in the sweet potato caramelized slightly when they hit the hot griddle, creating sweet spots that tasted almost like candy. The pancakes browned more quickly than regular pancakes because of these natural sugars, so grandmothers had to watch them carefully and cook them at slightly lower temperature to prevent burning. These pancakes were served with butter and a drizzle of honey or maple syrup, though some grandmothers topped them with chopped pecans, creating combination that tasted exactly like sweet potato casserole, the traditional Thanksgiving side dish, but in pancake form for breakfast. Lemon ricotta pancakes brought Italian influence and sophisticated flavor to American breakfast tables through ricotta cheese and lemon zest, creating pancakes that were light, fluffy, and elegant enough to serve to company for brunch. These pancakes cost about 75 cents, expensive for 1950s breakfast, and created pancakes that tasted like they belonged in a fancy restaurant rather than a home kitchen. The ricotta cheese added protein and created incredibly fluffy texture through its moisture and slight graininess, while the lemon zest added brightness that cut through the richness and made each bite feel fresh rather than heavy. Grandmothers made lemon ricotta pancakes by mixing ricotta cheese with eggs, separating the eggs and beating the whites until fluffy before folding them into the batter. This extra step, separating eggs and beating the whites, created the lightest, fluffiest pancakes possible, with texture more like soufflé than regular pancakes. The beaten egg whites had to be folded in gently, or they deflated, requiring the same careful technique used in fancy baking. The lemon zest was grated fresh from lemon peel, creating bright, true lemon flavor that was different from lemon extract or lemon juice. The zest contained lemon's essential oils, which carried more flavor than the juice, and the tiny flecks of yellow zest throughout the batter created visual interest as well as flavor. These pancakes were delicate and required gentle handling. They were so light and fluffy that flipping them too roughly could deflate them. Grandmothers learned to flip them carefully using 2 spatulas or a very gentle wrist motion, treating them more like crepes than sturdy buttermilk pancakes. The pancakes were served with butter and a dusting of powdered sugar, or with fresh berries and whipped cream, creating presentation that looked fancy and special. The serving style showed that these weren't everyday pancakes, but rather special occasion breakfast worthy of Sunday mornings or holiday brunches when you wanted to impress. Lemon ricotta pancakes appeared primarily in Italian-American households, where ricotta cheese was common ingredient and where the technique of separating eggs and beating whites was familiar from Italian baking traditions. The recipe represented cultural adaptation, taking Italian ingredients and techniques and applying them to American pancake format, creating fusion food before that term existed. The pancakes taught that breakfast could be elegant, that simple ingredients properly handled created sophisticated results. That technique mattered as much as ingredients. These pancakes also taught about texture, that fluffy wasn't just about adding more baking powder, but rather about incorporating air through beaten egg whites. That gentle folding preserved that air, and that delicate texture required delicate handling throughout the cooking process. Lemon ricotta pancakes represented the peak of 1950s pancake sophistication, showing how far pancakes had evolved from simple flour-egg-milk combinations into complex creations requiring multiple techniques and careful execution. Coconut pancakes brought tropical flavor to Midwestern breakfast tables through shredded coconut mixed into batter, creating pancakes with interesting texture and sweet coconut flavor. These pancakes cost about 40 cents and created breakfast that felt special and different, breaking up the winter monotony of oatmeal and plain pancakes with flavor that reminded everyone that warm places existed even if you couldn't visit them. The coconut added sweetness and created chewy texture that was different from any other pancake variety. Grandmothers made coconut pancakes by stirring sweetened shredded coconut into regular pancake batter, creating batter studded with white coconut shreds that looked interesting even before cooking. The coconut on the bottom of each pancake, touching the hot griddle, toasted and caramelized, creating crunchy, sweet bits, contrasted with the softer coconut mixed throughout the pancake. The sweetened coconut meant these pancakes needed less added sugar than regular pancakes, and some grandmothers left sugar out entirely, letting the coconut provide all the sweetness. This natural sweetness taught that ingredients could contribute multiple qualities. Coconut wasn't just flavor and texture, but also sweetener, reducing the need for added sugar. These pancakes were served with butter and often with pineapple, either fresh if you could get it, or canned pineapple chunks or crushed pineapple, creating tropical combination that tasted like vacation food. The pineapple's acidity cut through the coconut's richness and created balanced flavor that was sweet but not cloying. Coconut pancakes appeared most often during winter when people craved brightness and warmth, how flavors could transport you mentally even when you couldn't travel physically. The pancakes also appeared at themed breakfasts, Hawaiian-themed parties or tropical brunches, where the food matched the decoration and created complete experience. This theming showed how food could be part of larger storytelling, how meals could have narratives and create immersive experiences beyond just eating. Coconut pancakes taught that exotic ingredients were becoming available in regular grocery stores, that you didn't have to live in tropical places to eat tropical foods, that American cooking was incorporating flavors from around the world, and that breakfast could be adventurous rather than routine. The pancakes also taught about texture, that adding ingredients with different textures created interest, that chewy coconut made pancakes more fun to eat, and that textural variety mattered as much as flavor variety in creating memorable food. Coconut pancakes represented post-war America's expanding culinary horizons, showing how ingredients that had been exotic and rare before the war were becoming common and accessible, how American cooking was becoming more diverse and international, and how home cooks were willing to experiment with new flavors and ingredients. Cornflake pancakes brought breakfast cereal into pancake batter through crushed cornflakes mixed into batter or used as coating, creating pancakes with extra crunch and subtle corn flavor that kids loved because it combined two breakfast foods into one. These pancakes cost about 25 cents and solved the problem of cornflakes that had gotten stale and lost their crunch. Instead of throwing them away, grandmothers crushed them and stirred them into pancake batter, creating new use for cereal that wasn't good for eating plain anymore. This waste-nothing approach characterized all of grandmother's cooking, showing that creativity could rescue ingredients that seemed past their usefulness. The cornflakes added subtle sweetness if you used sweetened cornflakes, or pure corn flavor if you used plain cornflakes. Either way, they created pancakes that tasted different from regular pancakes without being so different that kids refused to eat them. The familiar cereal flavor made the pancakes feel safe and appealing rather than weird and experimental. These pancakes were served with butter and syrup just like regular pancakes, though some grandmothers served them with sliced bananas, creating combination that tasted like cereal with bananas, a familiar breakfast flavor, but in pancake form. This flavor familiarity made cornflake pancakes popular with children who might have been suspicious of more adventurous pancake varieties. Cornflake pancakes appeared most often on Saturday mornings when kids were home from school and wanted something fun and special for breakfast, and made breakfast feel like an event rather than just fuel for the day. The pancakes taught that processed foods like breakfast cereal could be ingredients rather than just foods eaten on their own, that creativity meant seeing new uses for familiar products, and that waste could be prevented by thinking flexibly about how to use ingredients that seemed single-purpose. Cornflake pancakes also taught about texture, that crunch made food more interesting, and that kids particularly responded to textural variety that made eating more interactive and fun. These pancakes represented 1950s embrace of processed convenience foods, showing how products like breakfast cereal were becoming integrated into home cooking rather than being seen as separate category of food. The integration showed that grandmothers weren't resistant to new products, but rather found creative ways to incorporate them into traditional cooking. 25 pancakes, 5 left. You've watched mashed potatoes become breakfast, sweet potatoes bring autumn indoors, lemon ricotta create elegance, coconut transport you to tropics, cornflakes solve the stale cereal problem. Each pancake was a lesson in thrift, creativity, cultural adaptation, seasonal eating, or pure playful fun. 5 final pancakes complete the story. Spice pancakes brought warming flavors to breakfast through cinnamon, nutmeg. These pancakes cost about 20 cents and created breakfast that smelled amazing while cooking, and making the pancakes memorable beyond just their taste. Grandmothers made spice pancakes by adding ground cinnamon, nutmeg. The spice amounts had to be balanced carefully, but the right balance created complex flavor that was warm and comforting. The pancakes were served with butter and maple syrup, though some grandmothers made spiced syrup by warming maple syrup. Spice pancakes appeared most often during fall and winter when warm spices felt appropriate for cold mornings and when the flavors matched the season's other foods. Seasonal timing taught that different times of year called for different flavors. Food should match the weather and the season rather than being the same year-round. The pancakes also appeared on Christmas morning in some households, creating breakfast that tasted festive and special without requiring elaborate preparation or expensive ingredients. The familiar holiday spices made the morning feel celebratory even before presents were opened, showing how food could create holiday atmosphere through flavor and smell. Spice pancakes taught that spices were an affordable way to create variety, that the same basic pancake recipe could taste completely different with simple additions. That smell was an important part of food experience, and that creating anticipation through smell was as valuable as the taste itself. The pancakes also taught about spice combinations, that certain spices worked together to create more than the sum of their parts, that balance mattered more than quantity, and that understanding spice behavior separated good cooks from those who just followed recipes blindly. Spice pancakes represented the kind of simple variation that kept breakfast interesting without requiring special ingredients or complicated techniques, showing that creativity didn't always mean complexity, but sometimes just meant thoughtful use of pantry staples you already owned. Molasses pancakes brought deep, dark sweetness to breakfast through molasses stirred into batter, creating pancakes that tasted rich and complex, almost like gingerbread, with robust flavor that appealed to adults more than children who often found molasses too strong. These pancakes cost about 25 cents and created breakfast that was filling and substantial, with molasses providing iron and minerals that white sugar lacked. Grandmothers who valued nutrition appreciated that molasses pancakes offered more than empty calories, that the dark syrup provided actual nutritional benefit beyond just sweetness. Grandmothers made molasses pancakes by stirring molasses into regular pancake batter, along with warm spices like ginger and cinnamon that complemented molasses's deep flavor. The molasses made the batter darker and thicker, requiring extra milk to thin it to proper consistency. The molasses also made the pancakes more tender because its acidity worked like buttermilk, creating chemical reaction that produced fluffy texture. The pancakes browned quickly because molasses contained more sugar than regular pancake batter, so grandmothers had to watch them carefully and cook them at slightly lower temperature to prevent burning. The dark color made it hard to judge doneness by appearance. You couldn't rely on golden brown color when the batter started out brown, so grandmothers learned to judge by touch and timing instead. These pancakes were served with butter, and some grandmothers skipped syrup entirely because the molasses made them sweet enough on their own. Others served them with additional molasses or with molasses mixed with butter, creating topping that intensified the molasses flavor for those who loved it. Molasses pancakes appeared most often in rural areas and in households where molasses was a common ingredient used in baking and cooking. The regional variation showed how ingredient availability shaped food traditions, with molasses-loving regions creating molasses pancakes, while areas where molasses was less common never developed the tradition. The pancakes also appeared during winter when hearty, filling breakfast felt appropriate for cold mornings and when the dark, rich flavor matched the season. The seasonal timing taught that heavy, robust foods belonged to winter while lighter, brighter foods belonged to summer. Molasses pancakes taught that sweetness came in different forms, that dark sweetness was different from white sugar sweetness, that nutrition could be part of breakfast planning, and that strong flavors had their place even if they weren't universally popular. The pancakes also taught about acquired tastes, that some foods needed multiple exposures before you learned to appreciate them, that children's preferences weren't the only ones that mattered, and that adult food could be different from kid food. Zucchini pancakes brought vegetable garden abundance into breakfast through grated zucchini mixed into batter, creating savory pancakes that solved the late summer problem of too many zucchini and not enough ways to use them all. These pancakes cost almost nothing because they used zucchini from backyard gardens that produced more than families could eat fresh. The recipe represented the same waste-nothing philosophy that characterized all grandmother cooking. When the garden gave you more than you could use, you got creative and found new ways to eat it. Grandmothers made zucchini pancakes by grating raw zucchini on box graters, squeezing out excess moisture, just like with potato pancakes, then stirring the grated zucchini into savory pancake batter made with less sugar and more salt than sweet pancakes. The zucchini added moisture and created interesting texture, soft vegetable pieces throughout each pancake that were tender and mild-tasting. The squeezing step was essential. Zucchini contained lots of water that would make the pancakes soggy if not removed. Grandmothers squeezed grated zucchini in clean kitchen towels, wringing hard until no more liquid came out, teaching that cooking should respond to what was available rather than ignoring seasons and availability. The pancakes taught that vegetables could be breakfast food, that savory breakfast was just as valid as sweet breakfast, that garden abundance required creativity and flexibility, and that the same basic pancake technique could be adapted for completely different purposes depending on what ingredients you used and how you seasoned them. Zucchini pancakes also taught about moisture management, that some ingredients needed moisture removed before use, that squeezing and draining were important techniques, and that understanding how ingredients behaved in batter separated successful cooking from failures. These pancakes represented backyard gardening culture of 1950s suburbs, showing how families grew their own vegetables and had to figure out how to use everything they grew. The gardening connection meant zucchini pancakes were more common in suburbs than in cities, creating geographic variation in pancake traditions based on whether families had garden space. Eggnog pancakes brought Christmas flavors to breakfast through store-bought or homemade eggnog used instead of milk in pancake batter, creating pancakes that tasted like the holidays and appeared primarily during the brief weeks when eggnog was available in stores. These pancakes cost about 40 cents when using store-bought eggnog and created breakfast that felt festive and special, appropriate for Christmas morning or any winter morning when you wanted something more exciting than regular pancakes. The eggnog's richness and spices, nutmeg, cinnamon, vanilla, made the pancakes taste celebratory, even without special toppings. Grandmothers made eggnog pancakes by replacing the milk in regular pancake batter with eggnog, creating richer, more flavorful batter that was slightly thicker than regular batter because eggnog contained cream and eggs. The eggnog's spices meant no additional spices were needed. The eggnog provided all the flavor, making this one of the simplest variation recipes. The pancakes were extra tender because eggnog's fat content created soft texture, and they browned beautifully because of eggnog's sugar content. The rich, golden color made them look as special as they tasted, creating visual appeal that matched the flavor appeal. These pancakes were served with butter and a dusting of powdered sugar, or with whipped cream, treating them more like dessert than breakfast. Some grandmothers served them with rum-flavored syrup, using rum extract, not actual rum, when serving children, creating all eggnog flavor profile that tasted coordinated and intentional. Eggnog pancakes appeared only during the few weeks each year when eggnog was available, roughly Thanksgiving through New Year's. The limited availability made them feel special and anticipated rather than routine, creating excitement when eggnog season arrived and making the pancakes memorable rather than mundane. The seasonal limitation also taught about eating with the seasons and the calendar, about how some foods belonged to specific times and trying to have them year-round would diminish their specialness. The anticipation created by seasonal availability made eggnog pancakes more exciting than if they'd been available constantly. Eggnog pancakes taught that holiday flavors could extend beyond holiday desserts into everyday meals, that breakfast could be celebratory, that richness and indulgence had place at morning meals during special seasons, and that using convenience products like store-bought eggnog could create impressive results without complicated preparation. The pancakes also taught about adaptation, that the same basic pancake recipe could be transformed by simply swapping one liquid for another, that creativity didn't always require complex techniques or exotic ingredients, and that sometimes the simplest variations created the most dramatic results. Eggnog pancakes represented 1950s embrace of seasonal convenience products, showing how store-bought items like eggnog were becoming part of home cooking rather than being seen as replacements for home cooking, and how grandmothers incorporated these products into traditional recipes to create new variations. Johnny cakes represented the oldest pancake tradition in America, predating the 1950s by centuries, but still made by grandmothers who'd learned from their mothers, creating unbroken chain of tradition connecting 1950s breakfast tables to colonial America. These pancakes cost about 15 cents and created breakfast that was different from fluffy buttermilk pancakes. Johnny cakes were thin, crispy, and made from cornmeal rather than wheat flour, creating texture and flavor that was more like cornbread than cake. The distinctive character made them recognizable as something different, something older, something connected to American history in ways that newer pancake varieties couldn't match. Grandmothers made Johnny cakes by mixing white cornmeal with boiling water and salt, creating thick batter that was more like porridge than pancake batter. The boiling water cooked the cornmeal slightly, creating smoother texture than raw cornmeal would provide. Some grandmothers added a little milk or butter, but traditional Johnny cakes were just cornmeal, water, and salt, simple ingredients that connected to times when those were the only ingredients available. The batter was spooned onto a hot, well-greased griddle and spread thin, creating cakes that were crispy at the edges and tender in the middle. The thin spreading was essential. Thick Johnny cakes stayed gummy and didn't develop the crispy edges that characterized proper Johnny cakes. The cooking took patience because the cakes needed time to develop their crust without burning. Johnny cakes were served with butter and maple syrup, or with butter and molasses, creating simple breakfast that tasted like American history. The simplicity was part of their appeal. No fancy ingredients, no complicated techniques, just cornmeal and water transformed into breakfast through proper cooking. These pancakes appeared primarily in Rhode Island and nearby areas where Johnny cake tradition was strongest, creating regional food identity that marked where you were from. Rhode Islanders debated Johnny cake technique with passion. Should they be thick or thin, made with white or yellow cornmeal, cooked crispy or soft? These debates revealed that even simple foods carried deep meaning and that regional variations created identity and belonging. Johnny cakes taught that American food history was long and deep, that some traditions predated modern recipes by centuries, that simple ingredients, properly prepared, created satisfying food, and that regional traditions deserved preservation even when national standardization threatened to erase local variations. The pancakes also taught about continuity, that making Johnny cakes in 1950s connected you to colonial ancestors who'd made the same food, that food traditions could span centuries when communities valued them enough to maintain them, and that preservation of foodways was preservation of history and identity. Johnny Cakes represented everything this collection of pancakes was about: tradition, regional identity, waste-nothing philosophy, simple ingredients transformed through technique, and knowledge passed down through generations of grandmothers who understood that breakfast mattered, that morning meals deserved care and creativity, and that pancakes were never just pancakes, but rather carriers of culture, history, and love. Which of these 30 pancake recipes did your grandmother make on Saturday mornings in the 1950s? Comment the pancake name and your state. I'm mapping where these breakfast traditions persisted longest and which regions abandoned them first, as convenience mixes replaced the from-scratch cooking that defined grandmother's kitchen. If you made it through all 30 pancakes, you understand that 1950s grandmothers weren't just making breakfast, they were teaching lessons about thrift, creativity, seasonal eating, cultural adaptation, and the belief that morning meals deserved the same care and attention as dinner, that breakfast wasn't just fuel, but rather opportunity for variety, creativity, and connection. They mastered techniques that required years of practice and understanding that couldn't be learned from written recipes alone. Knowing when to squeeze moisture from grated vegetables, understanding how different flours and additions changed batter consistency, learning to adjust heat for different pancake types, timing flips perfectly so pancakes cooked through without burning, recognizing when beaten egg whites were ready to fold. Every technique separated experienced cooks from beginners, creating knowledge that was earned through practice rather than just reading instructions.